Welcome to News Spews, episode 1, which I'll call the 12 Sprays of Christmas. Thank you for being here, and thank you for any likes or subscriptions or shares or what have you. But it's perhaps a little early. So it's the 12 sprays of Christmas because it's always Christmas on News Spews. Years ago I had a radio show and used to say it's always Christmas on World Heat, and I have a saying that it's always Christmas at my home, but nobody gets any presents. In fact, a lot of the drawings behind me are Christmas related that I produced over the years. That's another subject. But I'm here because just over the years I've always been political, but always been an outsider. And of course, in the modern age, it's all about taking sides and despising the other side, as I find really distressing. I'm not here to promote hate, and so I'll probably have quite a small audience for this if I can construct one, because people are hungry for hate, and in many ways that's what this show is really going to be about, is looking at the news that's put before me and just reporting why I find it inadequate or worse. I think a lot of what I see is malicious, it's propaganda, and it's direct abuse of the audience, which in general is the public, which means it could be you. So I have been opening my browser and seeing MSN, and now for about a year and a half I've been noticing these various articles that don't make a lot of sense. The headlines aren't borne out by the content of the article. The imagery, the phrasing, everything is designed to create an emotional reaction. I'm not going to be surprising anybody with this information. But I just thought I can't help myself but to notice it and respond to it within myself, and to make comments. And I found really quite remarkable that in a year and a half or so I've made about 11,000 comments that got through the filter on MSN. I've literally had 100,000 responses that got through the filter, and by my estimate something like 40,000 at that rate would have been deleted, because I think it runs about 40% of what I see doesn't make it to my eyeballs. And so we've got a fairly extreme case where I simply notice that an article is dishonest and tell the audience to be wary, and I'm attacked. I mean, literally just relentlessly attacked. There's a fellow recently called MS who proudly shows a Canadian flag in the MSN forum. And this person for weeks has been sending me literally 100 or 200 messages every day. And again, most of them are deleted. He runs at a much higher fail rate than 40%. I don't look at any of them. I mean, why would I care? They're just, you're a this, you're a that, a whole bunch of smiley faces. And for instance, today I mentioned there's an issue with Chauvin and a possible review of his conviction for the George Floyd case. And I'm in favor of a review for the simple reason that the atmosphere during that prosecution was so extraordinarily political, nationwide and worldwide, that it's extremely hard to believe that there was no bias, no bigotry. I remember, for instance, after Trump's supposed conviction for 34 felonies, one of the jurors was quoted as saying, basically, I didn't want to be the person who said no to a conviction and then have to go home and explain it to my New York neighbours and friends, etc. So a lot of these people went along with a conviction, I think, even knowing in their own hearts that there was supposed to be an appeal process and that perhaps it could be turned around and they wouldn't have to compromise themselves with their peers and kin and hood and what have you. So they made this choice to just do the easy thing, and I imagine in Chauvin's case that's also the case. Well, of course, what does this MS say to me after sending me 1,500 other abusive messages this week? He says, racist. And I don't know if it's obvious to you, but that bears out my theory very well, that there's no justice in a world where if you don't convict, you're a racist, regardless of the case. And my understanding of the case is that it wasn't even a race-related prosecution. Everybody else spoke about race, but I didn't see the prosecution really speaking about that. So, it's just a figment of imagination that millions upon millions upon millions of people have used to hate others, hurt others, burn, destroy. I mean, it's really been extreme, and a lot of people, for years was extreme violence, and it still is. And even now, we're just starting to see the BLM movement being shown in so many corners to have been corrupt to an extreme level. We don't even hear about Patrice Cullors, was it, who started that foundation in the first place anymore, and and all the mansions that she supposedly bought, etc. But I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just talking about the narrative that I've witnessed and how I feel about it. So I see that we also have a world where it's basically, here's a message, hate, and if other people do not hate as you hate who you hate, then hate them. And that's how you prove that you're a good person. Here's another quick example. Yesterday I mentioned, I made a comment on a post about a dollar store general CEO talking about a change in consumer behavior. And of course, in come the crowds to the lynch mob, basically, to hate Trump, to blame Trump. It's Trump, 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 Trump. Dollar General is closing stores all over the US. It's Trump's fault. The announcement was made a week after Trump was inaugurated, I believe, and obviously was planned significantly before then. I'll talk about it a bit later. But so here we have this situation where the only thing that people can do, literally, the article contained the word Trump about 2/3 through, and therefore it's all Trump's fault, and anybody who doesn't blame Trump must be punished. So, for instance, this person, Stephen Elliott, said, perhaps a change of lifestyle would help, like leaving and going to a hippie community. So this to me is a classic. These are the people who are supposed to be good and kind and wise and inclusive. You've heard it all before. And they basically put hate on the table. Nothing else, just hate and nothing. So I developed this formula that nothing plus hate equals failure. What else can I say? This is just a universal reality. I'm only thinking of a simple phrase to explain it. It's not a mystery, is it? It's not a surprise. It's not a new thing. None of our civilization was built on allowing hate to be the predominant reaction to everything. Our entire justice system was built in the Western world to take out as much of the personal emotional response as possible in a conviction, a prosecution, a conviction, and a punishment. So we've got a lot of hate, we've got a lot of failure, and I see it, and it's not so much that I want to take sides, it's that I don't want the hate to go by unresisted. And I think what you'll find is that all of the people who claim to be good and wise and noble and inclusive and so on claim that that's what they want. And then when you don't say exactly what they want you to say and hate exactly who they want you to hate, and as much as they want you to hate that person or thing, then they say perhaps a change of lifestyle would help, like leaving and going to a hippie community. I find this ironic because on one hand I'm supposedly MAGA, on another I'm liberal. So here I'm speaking against an article that's blaming Trump for something that's nothing to do with him, and I should go to a hippie community, but I definitely shouldn't be here. And that's how inclusive this person is. Thank you, Stephen Elliott. But it's just one example of the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. So this is my introduction to New Spews. I'm going to try to cover 12 subjects here, and because I'm new at this and it's literally taken me 12 hours to set up this whole thing so I can start recording. So I'll just go through in chunks and try to edit something together a bit later, and as I go along I'll become more efficient and so on. But I hope you'll come along and have a listen and just sort of try to get a sense of how the media is controlling you in very simple terms, not so much by saying this is all true, this is all a lie, but just by looking at the language of the media, body language, image selection, etc., and all the blatant contradictions that are out there. At the end of the day, I'd say if somebody claims to be a journalist, they know how to use language. And they know how to misuse language. And if they're not impartial in what they're saying, then they are also misusing information. Now, will YouTube even allow me to say things like this and Rumble, etc.? I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. But I'll introduce you over the time to some of the language I've developed. So nothing plus hate equals failure. Because in the MSN network you can't speak about people, or you can't say you in your comments. It's so very restricted that I've ended up with these quite convoluted terms that somehow get through the filter, because I think the AI filter doesn't really understand what they mean. And so I managed to get away with it. So to me, these units I also call husks of hate, and which is HOH. I don't use language like that to denigrate women or sex trade workers or what have you. But it does seem appropriate in this case. The husks of hate, who in my opinion are basically emptied by the factories of hate, who are the media outlets, and they're filled with hate, and they're set about to spew the hate and hate and hate and hate some more, and hate everyone who does not hate enough, and on it goes. I'm happy to say that there's been a decline in interest as far as I can tell. The numbers in MSN Network aren't very high. So I'm not drawing on X or what have you, where there were probably 1,000 times more comments in many cases than what I see. But this is what I've been experiencing, so I'll just start with talking about that, and we'll see where it goes, use some examples. And so there are other terms I use. So in my opinion, when a person is spewing hate, they're spewing fog, they're denying light. Which to me is what I call the fog of ungulate loathing. So it's a cloven hoof expression to describe a sort of herd mentality. We've got these, so basically we've got these husks roaming about in the fog of ungulate loathing, spewing more and more hate, thickening the fog and losing more and more light, and they're basically getting lost in the And they don't seem to realize that what I'm talking about is for their benefit. I'm actually trying to explain to them that there's a way out of this fog, there's a better way, and I call that the light. Okay? I have a phrase, a catchphrase of my own that's behind all of this. And going back a very, very long time now, 20 odd years, more than I think. I used to, even 30 odd years ago, used to try to sign my correspondence peace and light, peace and love. I'm not actually a hippie. I was a punk rocker really, and a headbanger, and Sex Pistols t-shirt. See, it's appropriate how I've started this here. The the catchphrase of the Sex Pistols album, which really sums it all up. I'm just not here to listen to any of the BS. And never mind that. Let's, I'll just look and see, does this seem plausible, yes or no? So my phrase, peace, love and light, I'm kind of a melancholy person, and I learned over the years to tell myself that instead of happiness, I need to seek peace, love and light. So to me, peace, literally, this is the broadest terms of these words. So peace is to be safe, to have inner peace, exterior peace, to manage anxiety, the satisfaction of feeling that life is going along in the right way, and happy relationships and all of that, all add up to peace. It's a founding place for me to have a safe home. I worked a lot in homeless shelters and outreach for addicts and that sort of thing. And so having a secure home is very important. Love is about not doing it alone, knowing that very few people can do life alone. And even if they personally can be alone, the world they live in was not created by them. So we can't do it alone. I don't think that much about romantic love myself. I'm perhaps getting a bit too old, or already a bit too old for that. But I find that the sense of community is extremely important to people in general. And whatever goals you want to pursue, it's probably going to need other people to help. So, and the last piece is light, which is really about goal orientation. It's to always be heading toward the light, but also the spiritual light, the light of a job well done, the end of the tunnel. We've got to be heading somewhere. I think spiritually, humanity needs that. Humans need that. And I see a lot of these people who are overwhelmed by hate are struggling because that's what they've been given as a mission, is to hate. Hate them, fear them, loathe them, silence them, push them away, or go to a hippie community. It simply means don't come on here and say things that diminish my hate. Well, I'm opposed to that plan. So here I am. I'm just taking it up a notch because I've been writing about this stuff under a different profile. But I've now set up a profile as New Spews, and I'll just, comment here and there. But a lot of the time, instead of having a dialogue in MSN where it's highly restricted, I'll have a dialogue with you. So welcome. Thank you very much. I'll move on to the next subject first, which I'll just stop recording here and I'll blend into that in a minute, I think. And then that was a very long introduction, but I'll try to skip more quickly through the material. This is still pretty much a practice round, really. But an introduction is necessary because I have a very distinct mission in mind, and it isn't to take sides and loathe the other side. I can honestly say, for instance, that I found Joe Biden a really horrifying character. I think he's a terrible man. Kamala Harris reminds me of my aunt in some respects, but she's a terrible woman. I can't imagine being satisfied with people like that ruling the world. A lot of people will jump in to say how much they hate Donald Trump, but I say this: I didn't really like any of the presidents that much, or much at all. The only one I ever really have spoken about particularly liking is Jimmy Carter, who is considered to be one of the worst in terms of being a president. But he was a good man and he did good things, as far as I could tell, in a personal capacity, and I admire that. In my opinion, Trump is not evil. He's certainly no more evil than any of the rest of them. And in fact, he is more capable and more driven. And yes, he's probably very narcissistic, and he's a bully, and he's vain, and he's arrogant, he's grandiose, and all that. But none of that really matters. Nobody gets to be a president if they have a pleasant personality. They all have issues and techniques and abuses that have got them there. Okay, so I'm not really interested in that. But I'm interested in the events, and I'll talk about them. So I'll just cut off there and try and edit this back together in a bit, and I'll move on to the next subject. So that introduction will be spray 1 for my 12 sprays of Christmas. It's called Spews, and it's difficult for one to spew without at least some spray. So that's what the logic of that is, aside from the fact that it's always Christmas at News Spews. So I thought I would just mention here the MSN community guidelines after what I just said in the introduction about this Stephen Elliott fellow. So it says here the MSN community... Oh, sorry. I better go to the other screen here. There we are. So it says the MSN community supports diverse, authentic conversations and content about issues and events that matter. This is a safe, inclusive and respectful forum where participants are responsible for their posts and how they treat one another. Civil discussion requires respect, even in disagreement. I have never seen any sign at all that what gets through the filter meets those standards. It's embarrassing, actually, how far short it falls. So basically, it's just a joke. At the end of the day, if you are anything remotely not against Trump and against the right or Musk or whatever the flavor of the day is, Russia and on, vaccines, RFK Jr., it just goes on and on and on and on. If anybody comes out to be impartial or just moderate about those people, they get hammered, and the MSN community guidelines do not stop that happening. So that's my second spew of the day. Let's look how ridiculous that is. Let me just skip along here and see if I can find some examples. So this subject I thought was interesting as an example. US-Denmark egg request shelved amid Greenland tensions. And then there's a picture of Costco with a sign, limit 3 eggs. So this is how my mind works, at least hopefully. I look at this thing and I think, my first thought is, you're not buying 3 eggs. It would be 3 cartons. 3 cartons of the size shown is 72 eggs. So right here we have this impression being given that the egg supply is that desperate, that there are only 3. Well, I thought, well, where's the open carton? Where's the little 3-egg container? Does anybody realistically think anybody else is going to buy 3 loose eggs and take them home? That they're going to want to pick eggs out of a case that's been fumbled by somebody else? That they're going to even make it home safely in the first place? It's just totally unrealistic. But it gives the impression to the audience that there is a very dire situation. And this makes people hate Trump. Now, what does this have to do with Trump? Really nothing very much. So let's see how the loving, inclusive, MSN positive community gets along reacting to that. Let the Yanks eat dried 10-year-old eggs, says Ken Hale. The USA is too busy cracking on tariffs. They do not need to be cracking on eggs. Does that even make any sense? So again, can you believe the audacity that Humpty Trumpty has? First slapping the peoples of Denmark and Greenland in the face, then turning around and asking for their help. He hasn't slapped anybody in the face. He's basically said we need to protect North America. So, don't help. Trump says lolly W. Trump was voted by the American people. So all 350 American people have to go without eggs to make this good person feel better about themselves. C says, go lay an egg, Trump. Nothing to spare as there is no surplus. Well, it actually says that in the article. There's no surplus anyway. So in fact, this whole idea that the request is being shelved by Denmark to spite Trump, which makes everybody happy, doesn't really seem to mean anything, does it? In fact, there are no eggs. There's no egg surplus in Europe, according to this guy. And really all Trump was trying to do was increase the supply. If there happens to be any available supply, we'll take it. We've had issues in America. So what are those issues? Did they start a month ago when Trump took presidency? Did he introduce bird flu? No. It's just nonsense. Nothing to do with Trump. So let's skip through some of these other things here. What else we got there on the eggs? Canada has plenty of eggs. We would all be happy to throw some eggs at you, Trump. The eggs the Americans are asking for help after their slap in the face. The US, I need to get organized. The convicted felon said he did not need anything from Canada. He's just putting out on the, a call for eggs. So anybody have any eggs to sell, we'll buy the eggs, okay? Now what these people want is anybody who did happen to have eggs to sell should throw them away or let them rot and then give them to Americans. Even though 70 million people voted against Trump, but they can't have any eggs either. I mean, it's just so cruel and so unnecessary. So that goes on and on and on. So here we see articles that come around the same time as 4 days ago. Could vaccinating chickens be the key to cutting soaring egg prices? Well, first of all, the egg prices have come down. So we're still calling them soaring. The soaring was something that Trump inherited, and the solution could be vaccinating chickens so that they don't have the flu. So I mean, it's nothing to do with Trump, is it? So you are telling me that American chicken farmers aren't inoculating these chicks when they enter the barn? Oh, God, I'm a bit bored with this already. It's just silly. So next up comes FDA says egg recall over salmonella can have serious health effects. Avoid these brands. So it's not about a vaccination, it's about salmonella. So just a couple of quick comments about other views on this. Costco and other retailers are experiencing egg shortages, limiting purchases due to a widespread outbreak of avian influenza that has significantly impacted egg-laying hens and reduced the supply of eggs. Nothing to do with Trump. I read somewhere that there were 3 states in particular that were having problems with this. So even the idea that all of America is struggling seems to be false. And Costco is restricting egg sales basically because people are buying them. There's been a shortage, and if people go into Costco, they'll buy as many eggs as they can, just like in every other shortage scenario, toilet paper, etc. You remember back 5 years. So here we have basically just a whole bunch of drivel about hating Trump. So that's eggs, news spew number 3. Okay, this might be a little awkward in that I'll have to edit it back in earlier. But I thought I'd just try again to run through some of the comments on eggs to show how the good and the wise and the noble and the inclusive are really responding with compassion for Americans, the vast majority of whom, 280 million, didn't vote for Trump. Over 200 million didn't vote for anyone. Good number of them are children. And this is your attitude, Rob Nichols. Sounds like Trump has egg on his face. This "you owe us" attitude, says Jeanette Costello, that exists in Trump's America is what's going to be the ultimate demise of the USA as an ally to the world. Now just think about that. So the USA is going to be punished because "you owe us" attitude for saving Europe, etc., etc., and basically vast amounts of money flow out of the US to the rest of the world. That's the trade deficit. That's what it means. They produce the value, and then it leaves the country and it doesn't come back. Well, Trump would like to reset away from the globalist attitude and back toward America being strong. And frankly, America being strong is not the demise of the USA as an ally to the world. The rest of the world ignoring the USA and punishing the USA is their loss. Katana Lakeland, Trump needs to take all tariffs off all countries before he begs, "Please, can I have more, sir?" That's not what happened. He's put out a call to all kind of countries. Do you have any eggs? And by the way, America imports quite a lot of eggs. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of eggs from half a dozen different countries and probably more. LOL, loser, Trump shot himself in the foot there. He didn't do anything. There were no surplus eggs, according to the article. And they said no because they didn't have any. Just say that bit again. So LOL, loser, Trump shot himself in the foot there. Did he? He simply tried to bring down the price of eggs in America. Lisa Cecile, I myself find this quite funny. Humpty Dumpty has been asking Denmark for eggs to bring down the price, etc. They then tries to scare the Danish and Denmark people that he wants Greenland and their rare earth minerals or whatever I guess they're saying. No, he offered to buy Greenland. Excuse me, I've had a bronchitis. So he offered to buy Greenland because America has to protect it. Greenland is actually part of the North American continent, and Denmark's not going to come to protect Greenland for the sake of America and Canada. A Canadian friend of mine says, "Oh, I don't understand the US having to protect Canada." Really? I mean, come on, there are 10 times as many people there and all the wealth in the world, all the military power. But no, it's Canada that's going to, and Denmark. That's the team. They'll protect the Arctic, Canada and Greenland, and they'll do it all with 15% of the American population and wealth. Brian S. Sorry, no deal, bozo. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. There are people, supposedly, there are children who don't have eggs. The US doesn't need other countries' eggs or anything else they produce, just spite. No pressure then. Let them sort it out on their own. They're sorting it out on their own. There's been a salmonella incident. I mean, what do you think? There's no time that anybody else needs American eggs? Let them eat cake. KS, meaningless. Old Crower. Canada can't help much. Our cost plus the tariffs. Well, are there tariffs on eggs from Canada? I'm pretty sure there would be tariffs on eggs going into Canada from the US. Trump is putting all his eggs in one basket. Just cheap jokes. Don't give them a single egg. They don't deserve help, says Aaron Mason. Good man, Aaron. John Detter, good for Greenland and the EU for not helping. Why would a country want to help a country who threatens its sovereignty, and Canada as well? Trump hasn't threatened anybody's sovereignty. He's not invading. He's just saying, listen, if you guys want to come over to the US and Canada, we'll talk about it. And as a union, it will be a powerful thing. Now, I don't think anybody realistically, especially not Trump, thinks that's going to happen in 4 years. But hey, just hammer on and hate people because there's a shortage of eggs. Oh, God. Hate. It's crazy. Okay, my spew number 4 relates to retail, and not specifically to eggs, because I don't think Dollar General sells them, but I've never been to one. So there's an article here that brought out all the Trump hate. Trump, you know. This guy, this is hard, right? But this company is closing a lot of stores. They've recently announced it, but they've got plans to close hundreds of stores. This has been planned at great length. It says here in the article that there was a 1% loss, I think, in customers. Operating profits plummeted by 49%. It's not going to change. Anticipating improvement in the macro environment, not anticipating for our core customers. It's, as usual, it's a very flimsy article. But it's not about Trump. I mean, what else is happening? What are other articles? These articles are all here in the same venue in MSN at the same time. Dollar Store General, so shutting 29 stores, that was February. Retail Apocalypse, The Sun, here, that's August last year, 2025, 141 stores closing. There are some specifics that closed because of crime, but I won't dwell on that. That's not most of them. So same thing, 141 stores amidst retail evolution and digital competition. So there's a headline that gives it away that doesn't have anything to do with Trump. Retail evolution and digital competition. Oh goodness, I can't. I've bitten off more than I can chew here for a first effort. So forgive me for being a little bit confused. But I'm just trying to draw up different headlines, not dig in too deeply, just to bring them up to say that the messages are all really here that contradict hate Trump. But the articles usually have to go to hate Trump. And how's that helping? I mean, there's people who just say, oh, it's Trump. Wait 4 years, get rid of him, and it'll be fine. The fact that it's not fine now after 4 years without him doesn't even seem to register. So Forever 21 filed for bankruptcy in the US for the second time. in 6 years. So that goes back 6 years. And there's another article, USA Today, on the same thing. So it goes on and on and on. Just blame Trump. So the fifth spray of Christmas is brain rot. So it says here, what is brain rot? How modern life is turning our minds to mush. And again, that's what I'm getting at with this show, I think, is just to look at how this massive onslaught of information that isn't legitimate, it's missold, misrepresented, and often there are contradictions of one claim in the article or elsewhere at the same time. So it's not difficult to find them. But as we all know, in the confirmation bias, we just tune out anything that doesn't sound like hate Trump. And I'm really honestly amazed by how many people are totally devoted to hating Trump. So here's an article. I won't dwell on it too much, but our brains are under stress. It says here, what is brain rot? While not a clinical diagnosis, the term brain rot captures the burnt-out feeling that follows an online scrolling session. The brain is exposed to far more information and demands than it can handle without proper breaks, which over time leads to difficulty concentrating, poor memory, and emotional exhaustion. Dr. Tironi explains. I'll be honest with you, I found myself struggling to concentrate all day to set all this stuff up, and I mentioned to a friend that I feel as though sometimes I can't think straight anymore. It's because I've been subjecting myself to this. So again, that's partly why I'm doing News Spews here, is to try to step back a little bit from the sheer chaos and focus on a couple of things a little bit more, but I'm just skipping through them for now. So brain rot, okay. That's the fifth spew. I'll tell you something. Hate. If you just embrace hate and hate and hate and hate, that will rot your brain. It'll rot your heart. It'll rot your soul. It's a very bad road to go down. The fog of ungulate loathing will envelop you, and you will be lost. Come to the light where the brain rot and soul rot and heart rot will ease. It will be wonderful. Okay, my sixth spray of Christmas on News Spews, episode 1. Just a quick reference here to from brain rot to gut rot. I remember growing up in England that I would refer to gut rot in whenever there were incidents of flatulence, especially in later life after eating curried fowl curry and that sort of thing. I always liked hot food. I don't have the same tolerance that I did. So this doesn't mean much, but we've got this one article here about the conspiracy theories against Bill Gates, who is innocently not developing Bovaer apparently, but he's developing some other equivalent thing to cut down flatulence. And now there's backlash for a couple of brands in Europe that have used these chemicals in producing the milk that produce the butter, and people don't want to buy it. I personally don't know if it's safe or unsafe, but what I do know is we've been getting along with flatulent cows for a very, very, very long time. And the likelihood that cow flatulence is going to cure the environment, the climate change, etc., is pretty low. I should say that the likelihood that humanity can ever really take control of the environment is pretty low. If we are wholly responsible for climate change, we've been doing it for 200 years and we don't really know how to undo it. So I'm not confident that's going to happen, but we're going to spend trillions of trillions. There are all kinds of reasons to be suspicious about Bill Gates. I won't dwell on them because, as I said at the beginning, this show isn't about hate. But I look at this guy and I don't know I've ever really been all that impressed with him personally. He's obviously been very successful, so he's got some things going on. It's interesting here that he says that he had in this next article, Bill Gates gives up on saving the planet, a turning point for environmentalism. And as far as I can tell, this Daily Galaxy ad essentially says that the policy arm of his I forget now what organization, but anyway, the policy arm is closing and blah blah blah. But it says here that as Gates himself told the Wall Street Journal after a 3-hour dinner with Donald Trump, he was frankly impressed by the former president's grasp of issues dear to him, a statement that underscores his willingness to align with political figures who may not share his stated goals. Okay, so in other words, perhaps Donald Trump isn't an enemy to the environment after all, but he also isn't going to fund Bill Gates and not-for-profit to plan total climate management via economic management of the whole world. It doesn't seem very realistic to me anyway. So for the 9th spray of Christmas, let's look at Trump, since Bill Gates was just having dinner with him. I see this article here, and I mean, it terrifies me that somebody could believe something like this, or that somebody else could publish it as though it's legitimate. I found that there are a number of outlets that really stood out in my experience on MSN for spreading this kind of hate. The Independent is one, the Canadian Press, the Alternate, it's called, not the Alternate. There's a few others, it'll come back to me. But it says, I assume I'll be driven out of the country. Is this an American citizen because they're gay? That's not going to happen. My first impression of Trump when this whole thing began, the first of his rallies that I watched, I noticed him cheering. He had the crowd cheering for gay people. Okay, that's just a categorical thing. I've never heard him say anything about driving gay people out of the country. It's completely ridiculous. So is this person, non-binary, transgender person, the next 4 years would be hell. By the way, the name doesn't come out. This is all anonymous. I wanted to be out in the streets, be where people can see me, and also see the day today on the streets so that if anything starts changing, I perhaps have time to respond. What are you talking about? America is supposed to be a free place, and your gender expression doesn't really mean anything to anybody else. The madness Trump and a lot of people are talking about is related to mandating certain beliefs that a lot of other people aren't comfortable with. It's got nothing to do with driving anybody out of the country. And I can tell you, categorically, I noticed Trump bringing about that cheering, because I have been pro-gay all my life. I'm not gay. My mum was gay. And as far as I'm concerned, there is no reason I've ever heard that anybody should not be gay if that happens to be what their sexual attraction is. It's completely a non-issue to me, but defending the right to love, consulting adults is absolutely something I will stand for all my life. I was 12 when my mum moved in with a woman. And I remember her asking me, how do you feel? And I said, well, are you happy now? And you weren't happy with Dad? And she said, yes. And I said, well, that's okay by me. And I've really never worried about it ever since, except that I stand against bigotry. And again, that's what brings me here today. So this is bigotry. It's bigotry against Trump, and it's bigotry against half of America, presuming all kinds of evil in them that simply isn't real. So this person wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to, to complain and terrify others and so on, but doesn't want to give you their name for their safety's sake. Well, perhaps there's somebody out there who would care to look them up, but I doubt it. I think I see all of the persecution coming from the left. Really, that's what's definitely stood out to me in recent years. So is Trump really that evil? I don't think he's driving any gay people out of the country at any point. So here's another quick one on Trump. It says Donald Trump claims to have won another golf championship. What do you mean claims? So there's something here about nobody has claimed to see that, to have seen the first round, which he played early in the competition. And, well, he's the president, and he's extremely busy. He's trying to bring about world peace, for instance. And perhaps he was given grace to play a round a little early and just to score it up. But no, we have to deny that he could have won. Oh, he claims victories. You know what? He's good at golf. That's not a secret. He's, I'm sure, a lot better at golf than I am. If he's good at golf, no. You've got to hate Trump because he played a round separately from other people due to being president. Okay, let's move on from Trump. Okay, spew number 9 is going to be Musk. And the hatred for Musk. Sorry, let's not move on from Trump just yet, because there's a couple of interesting headlines here. I won't, again, go into all the details. Trump reaches career high approval as Democratic support dips, followed by Trump's approval rating is tanking among a key demographic that won him the election. That's Latinos. Latinos who, as I understood it, were to a significant degree keen to make their communities safer again by removing the more dangerous elements. So once again, though, we just see two headlines that really contradict each other, and it adds up to nothing except addling the minds of the audience. So let's move on a little bit to Musk, the 9th spray of Christmas. Musk bewilders with tales of magic money computers that make cash out of thin air. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Do you think the cash exists? The whole idea is that America is approaching $40 trillion in debt. I mean, that's 40,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000. I mean, it's really a lot of money, and that money doesn't exist. So Musk is using a bit of a silly phrase to refer to the reality that we don't have the money. America doesn't have the money. Pretty much the whole world is borrowing this money that they don't have. Okay, you see here the same image with a different headline altogether. Social Security officials says this Trump plan may mean service disruption for the elderly. So what do you think is with the smile and the thumbs up? On the previous headline, Magic Money, I suppose that would give the impression that it's a good thing producing this magic money out of thin air on computers. And so somehow it's Musk's problem that there's magic money. No, he's trying to stop spending the non-existent magic money. So here it says, Social Security official says this Trump plan may mean service disruption for the elderly. And this is basically an article about a telephone service and that's accessible by the elderly who aren't internet savvy. And I assume it ties in with the whole scenario about Musk finding people who are 120, 150, 200 years old, etc. And the work's being done to find out how much of that is actually being abused and how much of it is just, rogue files or what have you. But the complaint here is that Diaz explained that the agency's new internet identity proofing for claims made over the phone are likely to create significant roadblocks for beneficiaries. I think this is probably going to be like the 5 bullet point thing, where basically they're looking for people, first of all, to respond and demonstrate that they're real people. I don't think there's any likelihood that elderly people who are legitimate are going to be cut off because they can't use the internet. So somebody just says that, and even though everybody in the administration has emphasized no welfare cuts, no social service cuts, no Medicare cuts, etc., they're just trying to get off the fraudulent payments. So fine, if you're a real elderly person, that should be good. So again, we've got this picture with Musk with his thumb in the air and a headline about elderly people being cut off their social security. So I'm looking at another screen here. I have to train myself to look at the right screen. As I get organized, that'll get better. So that's spray number 9. Spray number 10 is spelt Nazti. That's the nasties. It's one of my turns of phrase. And so this is how it's portrayed. Just a couple, again, silly examples. Hunger Games, NASA building faces cockroach infestation as employees work in chairs with no desks. Well, what does that have to do with the Hunger Games? Absolutely nothing. But there's a picture of Trump with a whole bunch of files and he's signing away and somehow it's his fault. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I won't even bother to read this thing from Alternet. It's going to be a load of rubbish. But again, from Alternet. Welcome to autocracy. Trump declaring Biden's pardons void, debunked, and denounced. Well, actually, basically says that Trump has said it's got to go to the courts. He didn't say it's categorically debunked and denounced. He said that it needs to be sorted out. And I should think that's an extremely important question. I find it very peculiar that Biden would not have been actually hand-signing documents such as pardons for people like Fauci and his son. And if he wasn't, and it's generally considered that his competence was in decline, well, maybe these aren't legitimate, I don't know. But those two people have been pardoned and are maybe guilty of something. And so that's an important question to consider. Can that be investigated? Or in what way can it be investigated? So that's going to go on. Here, just as an aside, we've got a picture of Fannie Willis. So you talk about Trump as though he's an autocrat. Oh, is that the one? Yeah. Welcome to autocracy. It's not autocracy, is it? Going to the courts to have a fair hearing of the principle. That's got nothing to do with autocracy. But here we go. Historian sounds alarm on a scandal-mongering 1920s FBI director. Nothing to do with the 1920s. This person is accused of threatening to root out political opponents, but what he's actually saying is that he's going to root out political actors in the FBI. which is it's not appropriate place for them. So they need to go. They will go. That's good. So again, call him a Nazi. It means nothing. This one here on the same point. The US added to an international democracy monitoring list for the first time in history. Why? Did it get worse this year? No. Democracy hasn't changed in America. The process hasn't changed. And who are these people? Civicus. It's a South African group. I think they've got a lot more important things to worry about in South Africa than whether America should be on the watch list, monitoring list for the end of democracy. I mean, really, was anybody not watching? So to me, again, as I'm getting near the end here of my spews, a lot of my response and engagement here came when people started referring to nasties and throwing that term around. I find it deeply offensive, really, honestly, very disturbing that people should call other people nasties and downplay the horrors of what that actually means. I understand the term's been going back a long time. I remember George Bush, George W. being called that. I gather it goes back before that, but I wasn't watching American politics much at that time. But it's always bothered me enormously. That's a very particular thing to say. It's the worst of the worst of the worst. And what I find is that going about condemning them with a capital T for not being us, a fellow said to me yesterday, for instance, and I wasn't even supporting Trump. I was just saying about the store closures. This has nothing to do with Trump. And he said, oh, well, what would a Trump supporter know anything about fairness and truth or something like that? It's just ridiculous. What would they know? So that's another point, another comment between two people responding to my comment. That's what they're like. You know, that's what we expect of them. Well, what are them? People who look at an article and say, well, that's headline's not accurate. That's them, is it? If you don't hate who we hate as we hate, you honour them, and so we hate you. And that's how you know we're good. That's what a real problem is. And that's a left-wing problem, and it's very typically been a left-wing problem. And it always will be a left-wing problem because the principle of the left wing seems to be to despise, destroy a certain element of society because they're getting ahead and take all their stuff. And then the few get to keep it and then the millions die. It's not usually very good. So here's another... You know, it's a conversation that could go on and on and on and on and on, but I have no tolerance for throwing around nasty kinds of insults and downplaying what really happened and terrifying people with scenarios that aren't real. Another example is the references with exporting Venezuelans and drawing on this 18th century invasion law that hasn't been used since the Second World War again, which was Japanese internment camps and so on that happened at the time. Well, what's the comparison between Germany 1930s and now? Nothing. Was Germany being invaded by people that it became hostile to the people that had been often for generations in Germany? Based on their religion, it's got nothing to do with that. Based on their culture, nothing to do with it. Except if you're a gangster culture and you've broken into the country and you're wreaking havoc, you've got to go. It's nothing like a Japanese civilian internment camp. And in fairness, even when that was done, It was in early days of integration of different cultures and in conflict with Japan. People were terrified. Uh, Japanese people were notoriously very brutal warriors in the past. They were flying kamikaze missions. They'd attacked America. And America wasn't in a position to fully understand those risks. So they did some terrible things after trying to corral people for safety. They then abused them, they stole from them, they destroyed a lot of people, and that was cruel, that was evil. But it's got absolutely nothing to do with sending gangsters out of the country. They are destroying a lot of people. They are evil. And, well, they're due process and all that. Well, they're not Americans. They're not supposed to be in America. So they can go back. We don't have, or that America doesn't have capacity for them there, so they can go back, and America can pay to incarcerate and put them through trials there, and it'll be a good result to sort them out. And a very simple one, that's my 11th spray of Christmas. Media snubs Trump by breaking 140-year-old tradition. In this tradition, the president comes along to DC and everybody basically ribs each other, and it's all very funny. I would say simply this, that the people, the media, the journalists who are hosting this event are the ones who have betrayed tradition because they have not upheld the standard. And if Trump didn't go to the dinner, I should say he's snubbing them rather than the other way around. He wasn't there, so they can all demonize him, etc., etc. The man really has a lot more important things to do than indulge these silly games with these silly people. These silly and dangerous people. Because this kind of hate-mongering for a profit is done for the people who own these outfits. I thought it was very interesting to note when Trump basically had won that Bezos and the Washington Post started to drop the more extreme left-wing commentary and moderate it. And a lot of people were very upset because they felt betrayed. And this is what I've been saying to people all the time, a long, long time. You read this material, it fills you with fear, you feel hate, you're not really able to function anymore, you're not learning anything, you're not growing, you're not providing any solutions, you're feeling hate. And then when the factory of hate, like the Washington Post, decides that there's not enough money in it anymore, then all of the people they abused, the husks of hate, they filled with hate and set out to spew the hate, who are roaming around in the fog of ungulate loathing, lost and desperate and afraid. They are legitimately afraid, I think. They're afraid even for me to come along and say, you know, that headline and that article don't add up. That frightens people to the point that they must attack and try to drive people away. So it's terrible. So does the media snub Trump? Trump snubs the media whilst indulging them fully, simply by facing them and with incredible courage and persistence, really. I think whether you like him or not, his stamina is overwhelming. I've never really known anybody quite like this guy. So he's president. And that's all there is to it. The media can do what they like because the old media is basically obsolete. They're snubbing him because they've started to lose access to the White House because it's being spread more roundly through all kinds of different forces, so that these are not the only propaganda outlets out there. Now everybody has got some propaganda to spew. And people like Spews will come along and try to at least be a little bit moderate about it. So that's spray number 11. And for the final spray of Christmas on New Spews episode 1, the 12th spray of Christmas, I'll get back to the subject of failure. So we have this formula that adding nothing plus hate to a conversation, to anything, it's just failure. It's just a universal truth. It's been true for all time, all cultures, all universes. It says here, failure may not be so great after all. The pitch is simply that the myth is that failure is a good teacher, may need an update. What update? Don't try, don't learn. So it says people tend to overestimate the likelihood of success following failure, which may make us less willing to help others who are struggling. Okay, it's going all over the place, isn't it, this article? So the trouble with failure is that it doesn't lead to success, it stops you helping others. If you think you're going to succeed and you don't, well, you know what? Most of our endeavors fail. Sooner or later, some degree, we have to upgrade. We work together to keep refining our culture, our science, our medicine, anything you want, our art, our music. Either we work together and we keep enhancing, or we don't. In my mind, the mission is protect, include, and celebrate. This is the companion to peace, love, and light. If I need peace, love, and light, as I said at the beginning, then I can help others by protecting, including, and celebrating as they make successful steps. So even if they don't get all of the way, reinforcing the positive steps is still something helpful. So it's a positive contribution rather than adding nothing plus hate. I know that's not what this article is really about, but it's just the fact that it said failure. So I basically believe we're heading for the light, and the only thing that's stopping us is us. Unfortunately, the world has pushed to a point that it's pretty much not able to tolerate all its ambitions. We've been developing as civilization and technologies rapidly for a couple of 100 years. We've poisoned the planet. And whilst we strive for equity and a fair world, etc., the only way that can happen is everybody has nothing, basically. And I don't think that's a goal that a lot of people are going to get on board with. So these are still very hard times ahead, but it's not because of Trump. And it's not because of anything or anyone in particular or any amount of hate. It's because we, the whole of humanity, has been failing. Okay, now, I don't want to leave on a negative note, so I'll say thank you for listening. I'm sorry it was a bit chaotic. The shows will hopefully be more concise and organized. But I got totally overwhelmed with trying to set up all the technology to make this happen. And so this is just my first step to get it out. So please like and subscribe or follow or comment. If you want to talk about any of this stuff, that'd be wonderful in the comments. And over time, hopefully, we'll develop a group that really seriously wants to be pragmatic and solution-orientated and work toward the light. Thank you very much. Take care and farewell.